Hi, I'm Jesse Cannon, and this is My Point 4 Cents.
I'm Dustin Boyer.
I'm Andrew Southworth.
And I'm Matt Bacon. And this week we have a super interesting interview with my friend Brian Zissuk, the co-founder, head of artist and label services, and EVP of global operations at the music streaming service Audiomac.
So a lot of artists I've talked to and I've seen their social media platforms have shown me that they consistently do much better on other platforms that aren't TikTok. And all of us and other music marketing people on the internet have always talking about how the importance of TikTok, posting a lot. But some people just do better on other platforms. Like I know artists who crush on Instagram and they do really bad on TikTok. I know people who crush on YouTube Shorts and do really bad on TikTok. I also know people who do really good on TikTok. But this is an interesting thing that a lot of us probably don't talk about. And in my opinion, a lot of us, when we say like TikTok, we actually mean TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts. Kind of like how when a lot of people say Spotify, we really mean Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, Napster, Yandex, etc. But what's your take on this? And do you guys have any like trends or things you've seen for certain artists that might do better or worse on each independent platform based on what kind of artist they are?
Can I give this a really derivative TikTok hook? Why music marketing is dead on TikTok. The death of music marketing on TikTok, right? Like I can hear it. I can. So there's a couple things to really consider here, right? Yeah, certain genres are going to do better on TikTok than others, right? And
I actually disagree.
well, what I was going to say is that I think there's a niche for literally everything on TikTok, and that you will consistently be amazed to find like, oh, this weird niche thing that I thought was a bunch of really old school people actually does have a TikTok community. So like, I just want to be clear, like, even if you're making like weird dungeon synth, like there is a market on TikTok. I've seen it. And then I think the other piece is, to me, a lot of it just comes down to like level of comfort with the platform, right? Like I feel like the artists who are suffering on TikTok but crushing on Instagram are just more native to Instagram and more comfortable with it, generally speaking.
I feel that. If you watch like an hour of Instagram Reels and watch an hour of TikTok, there's definitely a different culture, so to speak, or a different vibe. And it's not necessarily just like these are the Gen Zs and these are the millennials, even though that's probably true if you were to look at the average population of TikTok versus Instagram. I know people who like crush on TikTok that are like in their 60s and they do better on TikTok than Instagram. And I say crush, I don't mean like they have like, 10 million followers or something, but they're consistently getting like thousands of views per video or something. And they're older, so they're not like a Gen Z audience. But it's that like cultural thing, I think is part of it. Like I don't really know how to phrase it, but there's like a vibe, so to speak.
What I've been seeing and what's really interesting is that on TikTok, it feels more narratively driven in a way. Like when I'm on Instagram Reels, I am finding consistently more niched out things based off of topics like music or video games or, Marvel movies. But when I'm on TikTok, it feels very narrative driven. If I dive into a narrative or a sound or something that is hyper focused on not a whole niche, but something very particular, it seems to go that route where I'm not just getting like musicians over and over again. I'm getting a single musician and all the content around them. And so it feels harder and harder to make breakout content on TikTok because the niches aren't as wide open, if that makes sense.
I am with you that this exists, but I'm also I have a like concurrent thought that I think is not mutually exclusive. It can exist with that when I do these dissections every week on my members feed of the artists who are going viral right now, one of the weirdest things you see is even when somebody makes a video that like you'd acknowledge as like an absolute banger, like amazing video, if it does really well on TikTok, it often doesn't do well on Instagram or YouTube Shorts as a wild card, and it does well there. So what that tells me a lot of time, and I think my quite data-informed hypothesis, because I do every genre of music, is that you see these platforms have a few people they're testing you on. And then that model keeps getting bigger as we know with the algorithms. We discussed this on a previous episode. How and who they test you on and what your fan base is totally, totally different all the time on what they test you on. So it determines how much you spread there. And then what I see after that is a certain type of artist then usually leans into one platform or the other, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I honestly, like, it's like a funny thing. Like, I think a lot. I say to people all the time, like, I'll see 5 artists doing better on Reels, 4 artists doing better on TikTok, and 1 on YouTube Shorts. But I see like an artist like Necri who's doing better on YouTube Shorts, which is the rarest thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the
and
hardest one in my opinion.
yeah, but Necri is like a soulful singing metal artist. And like you're like you would not think that that's the one that's going to do better on there, because I usually see indie and pop do better on
I have
YouTube Shorts.
some stats to walk
Please.
through for there's this country rock country, southern rock, depending on the song. We hop in a Zoom call and I'm like, how things have been going? And they're like, we're freaking smashing on YouTube. We're doing pretty good on Instagram. TikTok's a ghost town. And ghost town was a little dramatic because the numbers you're going to see, like a lot of people are like, I would kill for those numbers. But not a huge artist. They got like 15, 20,000 monthly listeners. They got a couple thousand followers in each platform. One video, 7,000 views on YouTube Shorts. Same video, 626 on TikTok. Next video, 3,900 on YouTube Shorts, 1,100 on TikTok. And the biggest kicker, 3,000 on TikTok, 23,000 on YouTube Shorts. The exact same video, same caption, same times posted. Nothing's different between the two other than these algorithms.
But how much time are they spending on each one too? Because I think that that's also the factor. Like when I talk to artists and they're like, I spend, I'm posting on all of these, and I'm like, which one do you use? Well, Instagram. Which one do you do best on? Instagram. It's
That's
like,
a thing I've heard.
100%.
There's a whole thing that like TikTok hates it when you post and ghost, right?
Yep.
Is that what you mean specifically? Like the fact that these algorithms look at what you're consuming and then like
yeah, like profile scores are a real thing. And, I just had a conversation with a manager today, and they're posting content that we made. And I'm like, what are you doing after you post? Well, we just post. And I'm like, well, think about the way, even like leave the algorithms out of it. Think about your connection to people on these platforms. If you post and then go to a couple of different artist pages that you like, or content that is similar to your content, and people see your name in those comment sections, and then they see it enough, they click on it, they explore your profile. What it's doing is training the algorithm on who your community is. So it has better information for targeting, therefore more likely your content's going to do better. So, I take a lot of guesses about the way cultures are, like I did earlier about on these platforms, but sometimes it really just boils down to there's just not enough data. It just doesn't know who to show your content to.
I think it's the most bullshit thing about these platforms personally, because like personally, I like to use like later.com or whatever equivalent, and I just schedule my stuff because I don't want to spend any time in TikTok. I actually kind of hate using TikTok. But recently I've found that when I post from my phone and then I swipe through some content and like some posts before and after each post, that those posts are just doing better.
Dude, if I could be critical to you just a moment, and it's funny because you and I never really interacted before this podcast, but I noticed on your TikTok, I watch all of y'all's TikToks. On your TikToks generally did really, really poorly. And it's because you repurposed your YouTube content. And so when I think it was like a couple of weeks ago, you were like, you know what? I'm just going to start posting. The content it feels like you're on the platform. It's genuinely, and I don't know what your numbers look like, but I would argue to say they're probably doing better than they were before.
Oh yeah, they're crushing now than what they were. And that was like, I think I started that around when we started this podcast, because I'm like, well, we're already going to be posting stuff for this podcast and social media. I should probably figure out my organic game, because literally the entire strategy was like, I have people that chop up my long form videos and we throw them on there because I kind of hate social media. And then after that, I was like, I should probably actually try. Yeah.
What is your job then? What are you doing?
I like the long form thing, man. I don't really like the short.
Oh, that's fair. You're really good at it
thing,
too.
and like I would much rather film a 15-minute long form video than do 15 1-minute videos like every time.
Yeah.
That's so crazy because my brain is the complete opposite.
Yeah, I am too. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a nightmare.
And this shows in the way Andrew and I create which team we're on versus which team you guys are on. So there you go.
I'm absolutely long form YouTube, long form podcast, newsletter, and then from those things spin them off into a bunch more short form things and not have to pull out my phone.
Yeah.
As much.
But this is the point. So I want to circle back to something Dustin said in a second, but first I just want to point out that like in a lot of cases the repurposing doesn't always work.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's really important to realize is it has to feel like the platform.
Yeah, you have to
Now,
meet people where they're at.
now, Dustin, I want to talk for a second. Can you elaborate on what a profile score is for the audience?
Yeah, and by the way, I think Instagram's CEO has talked about profile score a little bit, but generally it's understood that your profile has like a matrix of data for the algorithm. And part of that matrix is a score, and the score is basically saying how engaged is this person on our platform, because we want people who are engaged, content creators who exist on the platform. So the matrix of data might be like that profile score, people data up that is based on like who to show your content to, and then based off of that, it's sort of like Spotify in that way, right? Like pop score plus data to show you who to show your content to. So that's the general idea, is that if you show up, post, don't do anything else, or post inconsistently, right? I'm going to post 4 times this week and then I disappear for 2 weeks. Your profile score is going to go down. And just like Spotify, it's sort of your pop score of, how many people
It,
are we going to
it would
show this
almost
to?
be like, though, if Spotify took into account what music the artist listened to determine how to push out their music. That's kind of what the profile scoring's like.
Yeah, but let's throw another rock in the machine here that's going to make it even more fucked up. So Adam Mosseri, the CEO of Instagram, has said
Thank
it
you.
doesn't matter who you interact with on your profile. So like what I like to say is,
Oh,
if you're making music and you interact with your cousin Tony, who has autographed hockey jerseys on the wall all day, and you're just like, sick, Tony, sick, they don't look at that. But TikTok, when everybody does these experiments, shows overwhelmingly that they look at it. I've coached people out of algorithmic jail who have definitely just, I'm like, comment on the 7 artists closest to you that are small for a while, and sure enough, even when they're posting kind of bad stuff, they at least get out of 300 view jail eventually.
and
And but like
All
the
those old
thing,
school Gary V tactics,
yeah,
yeah,
so to speak. I
Yeah,
can't
It's
wait
yeah.
to
0.2
smoke
cents,
you
or
to it.
what does
yeah,
he call it?
The
$1.98
Or might.
because you put your 2 cents in
$1.98.
on, or $1.90, I think, because it's like you
Yeah.
put your 2 cents in on like 90 posts or something. But like that works. Like
Yeah.
I recommend that to artists all the time. Like
Yeah.
I've blown up TikToks that way because literally all it is it's kind of like if you go to a concert, if you're going to concerts regularly in your community, like niche club shows, and you talk to people at those shows, they start to realize who you are, and eventually some of them are going to go, what the fuck's up with that person? And they're going to go check you out. If you show up in the community in person, eventually that's going to start to turn into other stuff because people think you're cool and want to find out more about you. It's kind of the same on social media, right? Like if you're showing up in the comments, leaving a meaningful comment on a bunch of relevant things, people will go, oh, who's this? And if you're doing something cool, they will engage back. You don't have to ask them to engage back. They just will. And I've seen that happen so many times.
So to pile on with what you're saying and agree with it, which is what I was going to do, is that what actually happens is also, if those people are following you, you're getting the people most likely to like what you do to
Yeah.
then be part of the testing pool that you're now a part of.
Yeah.
And so getting a new testing
Yeah.
pool often seems to be the thing. The thing is cousin Brian with the hockey jerseys, he's very unlikely to go, wow, your black metal's real fucking sick, when he's just watching hockey all day. But for once you start getting those people in the pool that are probably, 1, obsessed enough to start following somebody they just see in the comments a lot, 2, obsessed with the genre enough to be into what may be a mediocre version of it, you are more likely to have that person that engage with you and drive you up into the algorithm.
So
Yes.
to bring this back to the topic of like people doing better or worse on certain platforms, it's not just that he's posting the same content at the same time of day, exact same captions and all this. Each of these platforms, he has effectively trained his own unique algorithm for, which it's different, right? 1, each platform has a different algorithm, but 2, I can tell you for a fact, this person hates TikTok, and I guarantee you has almost never pulled out the app to consume anything. But he does use YouTube all the time.
Yeah.
So that could alone be the problem.
It-
Is
it
he's
just-
posting and ghosting, never interacting, and the platform just doesn't know how to push him out to.
Well, and I want to circle back, Jesse. You said Instagram CEO said it doesn't, who
Yeah.
you interact with doesn't affect it. But I
Yeah,
mean,
it was a
look,
couple weeks ago.
But if you interact with somebody in another comment section and they liked you and they went and followed you,
Okay,
right?
you're getting me to clarify something I should say better. What he's basically saying is that Instagram's not looking at who you click like on and who you comment on who to serve you to. But I think what you're talking about is the effect Matt is that if you participate in these communities, then those people start to be more familiar with you and they're probably going to interact with you more than it doesn't. That's what he said. I can find it if you want.
So let me ask then, why is it that after we started this podcast, all my content has nosedived? Why do people hate me all of a sudden? No, I'm just... I mean, on TikTok, TikTok's been grueling for me lately, but it's mostly just because I think
It's because I'm posting now and everyone's realized that
that's
they
what it
dislike
is.
me.
I'm like, God damn it, he showed up.
Well,
Let's also get real here. Educational content does terrible in the summer.
Oh yeah. Well, on another note, like,
Does it? I've never
someone
said
said
that.
Oh
before
yeah. I mean,
we
Andrew
filmed
and I have
today
talked about this before too.
that like the TikTok for my 0.4 cents, the podcast you're listening to right now, has been doing really well lately, right? And none of us
True.
log into that account. And I mean, do you? Like, I've never once. I think I made that profile on my computer.
We
and
just
I've never
debunked our
once
own
logged in.
point.
So
That's so true.
is that just like, I mean, in our case, we have all 4 of our accounts kind of pointing people to it. So it might just be the case there's enough data
True.
where it doesn't need a swipe.
Yeah.
There's a few things, right? So it's like, from what I understand, is that there's enough data, and then also like the content we post there looks similar to the content we post individually.
Plus
And
familiar
so the
faces.
algorithm is able to go like, and I think there's like some creepy face and voice matching stuff going on too. And so the algorithm is able to go like, oh, okay, these 4 guys who are like doing okay on TikTok, who like clearly have an audience, their faces are all showing up here. It's the same reason why you see like some of these fan accounts that aren't real even, but are just literally interns at Sony making reels or TikToks based off of Sabrina Carpenter or whatever go
They hire
viral.
my company to do it now, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. But like they're not,
because they all fired their marketing departments.
but what
and
I'm
I
saying is
hired all
like
those
you're
people.
not logged into those, like you're not like you're using a scheduling app, I'm assuming. Like you don't have people like
No, because
working
no
those
scheduling
accounts.
app allows for sounds to attach appropriately.
That's true.
It's
But what I'm
very
saying
annoying.
is that your team is not like posting and then like thoughtfully using the app.
No, we
right?
are. We are.
Oh, you are?
100%
Okay,
we
wow, that's sick.
Well, you think about it. Like, I've got one for an artist that I just launched. And the first thing I do, and it is $1.80. If anybody's curious, it's Gary V's $1.80 strategy where you go and comment 90 times your 2 cents.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do is I tell my team, I'm like, hey, go comment like 90 times on just artist content around this artist. Or if it's a super small artist, like similar artists. And usually right out of the gate, if you do it enough, it immediately goes viral. And then you just kind of feed the beast there. So that's how we train the algorithm from the get-go. I worked with
Okay.
Skillet once where I did it, and the first post we had got 4 million views. And so it's if I think if I hadn't done that, like trained it to begin with, it would just do its normal thing. And honestly, looking at our TikTok, the thing that's going viral, it's got 50,000 views on it. You mentioned Two Hollis right out of the gate, Jesse, and celebrity, right? Mentioning celebrity really works. Also, our other video that did really well.
We're also
out of the
kind of
gate
getting roasted a little bit in the comment section for
by
that.
Two
because
Hollis.
apparently, the fact that you said he was dating Gracie Abrams was like misinformation or something. I don't know, but
Sure.
How dare
whatever.
you,
For those of you
Jesse.
watching that are salty about it, we're not perfect. Get over it.
Sure. I think what I actually did say is that the video has been debated in it, but yeah, sure. I think bet you that got cut out of the short part, but sure.
Yeah, it's hard to get your point across in 15, 30 seconds or whatever.
But if you think about it, when we're talking about data, again, it's not some algorithmic score or it's not a way to reward or punish you. It's literally just trying to find people. So if you mention a celebrity, somebody a lot of people know, then you're bound to hit it's just a numbers game. You're bound to hit people who know who Tula Hollis is versus like if I just show up and I'm like, I have an opinion. You're like, who the fuck is this guy? Right? Like that's really the math of it. And so if you look at our account, it's not a matter of us engaging or not engaging. It's just that we talked about the right people or the right subjects to garner enough attention that its luck was on our side.
A interesting thing that I have seen other people experiment with and I've experimented with is, in addition to the commenting thing, is the thing about going live afterwards. Does it push you out to more people? And that does seem to be the case on
Yeah,
TikTok. I don't know if you guys have seen the same thing, but like,
Julie
absolutely.
Cole is the master of this. And I know that
yeah,
nobody here follows country, but she is a monster and she's live all the time and she's massive now because of it. I would argue. Big
I think even YouTube is like rewards creators for being
yeah,
live like often, and then like to the point where I know a lot of people who do like 24/7 live streams
yeah.
of their music. Usually it's like a label or something where they have a ton of volume of music, but they'll have a 24/7 live stream. Because then essentially, since it's timely, the YouTube will serve it higher in like search results and homepage because they're like, oh, this is something that people don't want to miss. But then because of that, they're checking out stuff in their channel, and if
Mhm.
it's 24/7, it's always happening.
Funny enough is I got hired to make those for some podcasts and everything, and it worked for a while, and then it seemed to stop for them. So I don't know if either the algorithm changed, but it stopped literally the same day for both of them, and I created them at 2 different times. So that was really interesting.
Might be
But yeah, I
different for
know.
different platforms
Yeah,
too. Like
and
this,
different types of
one of
content.
these dudes has 20 live streams going at a time. He has like a
Oh,
computer farm with like a dedicated fiber line with a room full of computers and live streams, and like he'll have hundreds of viewers in each of these live streams. It's nuts.
the other thing I wanted to pile onto, so like RJ Passon, who's a god tier TikToker, he
Yeah.
kind of talked about that. That was a lot of the early days to his success. But a lot of people have also said to me though, that thing of like we were talking about the $1.80. It really is the thing is right before you post, if you're really having trouble doing this. Now, the thing I will say is you still have to have good content. It's not going to reward you with a 7 million view thing, but will it get you a little bit more? I can say for certain when people have been like, look, I've been doing this for 2 weeks. I've come back to you, look at the results, that they're at least doing a little better.
Well, and it's accuracy too. I like to think of it, and this goes for all marketing, is like imagine you walk into a football stadium and you're trying to get a hold and get the attention of one particular team. Are you gonna have better luck screaming your message on, let's say it's the visitor, on the visitor side or the home team, if your target demo is the visitor, right? You're gonna go to that side. Now imagine you don't know which side is which. You go to one side and you shout, nothing happens. You go to the other side, you shout, it's the right side. So it really is, now multiply that by 1,000,000, right? So you're just guessing over and over again. But the more data you have, if you understand which side's home, which side is visitor, then you're gonna be able to get there sooner.
Overall, there's social media is kind of a guessing game to a degree. So
Yeah.
like running
I mean, the
ads and stuff, it's
algorithm's
like
guessing, right?
Yeah.
You're
you
guessing, the
make like
algorithm's guessing.
you make a bunch of guesses as to what might work. You post it all, see what resonates, and then it's like, okay, well that sucked, that did well. Let me prune off that. Let's focus on this. Try some new stuff, and then after a year, you've tried like a couple thousand things, and you
That's
might
the
have a
part
good
that a
idea
lot
of
of
what people
artists
like.
don't get either. Like, they're like, "Oh, that didn't work, let's never do that again." And it's like, "No, experiment." Like, yes, but also try it and then move on and learn from it.
I have a different take on that. The thing I've really observed when I study all the viral artists, one of the things I see over and over again is they try it numerous times and keep
Yeah.
improving it. And that's what a lot of what works. Like
Mm.
you overwhelmingly see that the first time you do it usually does worst. And then I like kind of on this thing of like, try it 4 times, try to improve it and see what you learn from it each time. And then if it doesn't work 4 times, maybe try it again if you really believe in the idea at a different season.
Or a different song. Like, if you've got a clever
Yeah.
idea and you wanna apply it and you're like, I've seen artists have really great ideas around a song that isn't that good, and then another artist copy it, and then it goes bananas, and they're like,
Mhm.
"That was my idea," and it was like, "Well,
Yeah.
yeah, your idea
Yeah.
was good, but the song was shit." So,
Mhm.
like, it doesn't mean the idea is bad, it just means that, like, it didn't
No
produce
one cares about
consumption.
Zune, but everyone loved iPods, right? And I think
Mhm.
Zune was first,
Yeah. But
but iPods were better. So that's all that matters, right? That's people don't care what was first; they care about what's best.
It
yeah.
was a lot better when I got mine.
Your iPod or your Zune?
My iPod was a lot better than my Zune. I even
Yeah.
had the Pono because I chose to order ones, and that was real piece of shit.
I had a Zune first, and then I got an iPod after because I think the Zunes were cheaper or something, and my parents were
Mm.
more likely to get me one. But like, either way, like there are all these things first.
Yeah.
Apple's never first. They're usually pretty late to everything they do, but people just love what they do. I mean, not everyone, but like people don't care. The way they do things is what people like, and I think it's the same thing with content. It's like, who cares if someone does this thing first? Just do it better or do it in your own way. And
David Bowie, it's not who does it first, it's who does it best.
Hi, I have Brian Zissuk, founder of Audiomac, here on My Point 4 Cents. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Brian.
Thanks, Matt.
For those who don't know, can you just kind of explain Audiomac in a nutshell?
Yeah, Audiomac is a music streaming and artist discovery platform. It is a DSP. We are in the same category as Spotify or Apple Music. The difference, of course, is on Audiomac, you're not going to probably find every piece of recorded music in history. So we are not a full catalog offering. But unlike Spotify and Apple Music, independent developing artists can begin their journey on our platform from day one. You don't need to work with a record label or a distributor to make your music available on Audiomac. You can create an account for free and begin uploading.
I always thought it was interesting because it's sort of this weird, like, in the middle positioning. Like SoundCloud is like you can just put whatever up, but there's no distributor partnerships really. And then Spotify, like, you need a distributor. When you started Audiomac, what was the problem you were trying to solve?
So Audiomac launched in 2012. At the time, it was just a desktop website. And if you recall, prior to 2012, during we'll call it height of the blog era, artists were freely releasing music using file sharing services. And file sharing services, they were never meant to be used to disseminate music. It was a terrible experience for the artist. It was a terrible experience for the fans. The links would die. There would be pop-up ads and malware. Artists would continually have to re-upload. You couldn't track who was downloading or get any statistics on performance. And so that was the problem we identified. The solution was a free alternative, right? Where you weren't going to be charged for anything. You could create an account for free. You could upload without any storage limits or time limits or number of product limits. And at the time, I was running my first business, DJ Booth, and artists were coming to us pitching their music to be covered editorially. And we said, hey, you're sending us a Zippy share link. Why don't you try Audiomac? And that was sort of the genesis.
It's so funny. I had a conversation last night about that 2012 era, which felt like such a wild west of getting your music out because it felt like MySpace was kind of going away. And suddenly Bandcamp and SoundCloud and Audiomac kind of came on the scene. When that was happening, how aware were you of sort of these competing services?
Very aware, because running DJ Booth, we were being sent links to preview and listen to music from a large variety of options. What we identified during the DJ Booth days was artists needed an avenue to disseminate their music, but they also wanted someone to listen to it and write about it. And so prior to Audiomac, we were actually on DJ Booth offering a one-stop shop. We would host your music for free so that your fans could stream it and then freely download it. And on the same page, one of our writers would provide you with coverage so that you'd be able to take lines from that quasi review and then use that when you're trying to get booked or pitched to other platforms for coverage.
That would have been very perfect in that era. That's awesome. So one of the other things I find really interesting about Audiomac is it's historically been a very hip hop, Afrobeat, Latin kind of centered platform. Was that a goal from the start, or how did that happen?
So if we go all the way back during that blog era, we were predominantly working with and covering hip hop artists who were releasing free mixtapes. So at the very beginning, Audiomac was in fact synonymous with hip hop and R&B because those were for the most part, the artists who are using the platform. As we grew over time, the service itself took off in Africa, in the Caribbean, in parts of Latin America because of the functionality of the app itself. So, by and large, if you want to stream music using one of our competitors and you want to be able to have a like complete experience, you need a credit card in order to
Yeah.
unlock the full functionality of the service. And with Audiomac, you get a premium like experience without having to enter a credit card. So we have a freemium model, Matt. You can use it ad supported, or you could upgrade to our Audiomac Plus, which is half the price point of our competitors. It doesn't unlock, tens of millions of additional songs, but it does strip away all of the ads. So when you have someone in Nigeria or Jamaica who is cash strapped, they have minimal or no disposable income, they have a hard cap data plan, they have unreliable Wi-Fi. These are all impediments to being able to listen to music. And Audiomac has helped to democratize access to music for communities and in markets where that is just too difficult because of their
Yeah.
socioeconomic conditions. So I like to say, like, they chose us, right? We didn't
Yeah.
necessarily identify them and target them.
It's funny, right? Because when I first became aware of Audiomac in 2014, 2015, through our mutual friend, I was pretty young, right? I didn't process that like, oh, okay, actually this is super valuable to Caribbean, African markets. Was that a goal from the outset?
No, no,
Okay.
everyone always says, oh, you guys were so early on what's happening in Africa. Um, how did you come to the realization that that market was next? And my stock response is Africa chose us. We did not choose Africa. We have a feature using Audiomac where you can download for offline listening a limited number of songs. And this is especially helpful when you don't have any data left on your cellular plan and when you are in what we'll call a Wi-Fi desert, right? And this is a significant issue for tens, hundreds of millions of
Yeah.
music fans across the largest continent. And so having that one singular feature in a freemium model made it a very easy sell.
Yeah. No, and it's really fascinating to talk to Nigerian artists who are that's just kind of the African market I have the most friends in. It's really fascinating to talk to them and to see the pedestal they put Audiomac on. My question sort of from that is, and I promised my co-hosts I wouldn't go too deep into music in Africa, but I do want to talk about this a little bit because I think it's important as a part of the Audiomac story. Talk to me about the African music scene right now. What's exciting? What should people be aware of? What are they not aware of?
I think from a Western perspective, there is a tendency to focus in on only Afro beats and specifically what's happening or has happened in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And this is not unlike the way that Westerners tend to approach a lot in life, which is to consider entire cultures as a monolith.
Yeah.
Africa is a continent, it is not a country, and it is inclusive of many countries, all with very specific and unique scenes that are go beyond just what is happening in Nigeria. And I think for us, the most impactful decision that we made was to approach each market across the continent uniquely. And so we set up an ambassador program. We opened up an office in Lagos. We hired on the ground, and we curate each market by itself because the feedback we were getting from talent in Liberia and Kenya and Tanzania and South Africa was there's more to Africa than just what's
Yeah.
happening in Nigeria. And last year, we made a very critical decision, which was to pivot our trending and Rex to a geo-targeted um, approach. And so
Okay.
now, if you are on the app in Ghana or you are on the app in Mali, you are not only going to be fed artists who are seeing success from Nigeria, you're going to see artists who are making moves from your own backyard, so to speak. And this has helped create community and has helped artists and fans, uh, connect to on a deeper level with our app.
That's so cool. And I have to imagine that that feature helps artists other places too, obviously, right? Like if I'm really into hip hop in Denver, now I get a curated playlist of Denver hip hop people who are on the come up.
Yeah. So, if I'm in Chicago, I'm going to be recommended Midwest playlists. And if I'm in
Yeah.
New York, I'm going to be recommended East Coast playlists. Back in the day, and I talk about this ad nauseum on social all the time, back in the day, there was a greater focus on regional sounds and styles and scenes. And the Telecom Act pretty much broke that up. And now, whether you're listening to the radio in New York, Chicago, or LA, you're probably going to hear the same 40 songs.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't feel like home necessarily. I think we need to get back to that. And the data that we have suggests that people identify and connect with music that represents their city, their backyard.
That's so true because I feel like, my own experience I see with sort of especially like emo music, which very much had a moment in mid 2010s Philadelphia. And like I lived there and I grew up around there. But still, like there's something to be said for this record specifically has a lyric shouting out a street corner you've stood on,
Yeah,
which is,
I agree.
as like a final touch on the Africa point, what's something you feel like Westerners don't understand about that group of markets?
Probably the assumption that African music is not accessible to a non-African audience. And I'll give you an example, and that is there are African artists who make hip hop music, and there are African artists who make pop music and R&B music. Uh, Music transcends the boxes that it is put in. There's a tendency to assume a lot based on the genre classification that is assigned to a song through a label or a distributor. For example, many give some sort of vague or overarching classification like world, like what does that even mean for African music? And I think as a result, there's a tendency based on just personal preference, the way that a lot of DSPs have created their personalized algorithmic recommendations, where it turns people off from even pressing play. And so what we've done is not just helped create more energy in Africa for African music, but we've exposed tremendous amount of African talent to the rest of the world, and in particular, the diaspora, where you have Nigerian Americans or Ghanaians in Germany or Nigerians in the UK or South Africans in the UK who want that super curated African music, and they're not getting that on Spotify or on Apple
Yeah.
Music.
Yeah. But okay, so to circle back on Audiomac as a whole, where do you feel Audiomac fits into, obviously we have a primarily Western artist audience. Where do you feel Audiomac fits into like the marketing mix, right? Like Bandcamp and SoundCloud have kind of specific roles. What's sort of the place of an Audiomac?
It's a discovery vehicle, right? And it is a discovery vehicle that is bolstered by, I believe, best in class human curation. So at a time where all the other DSPs have deprioritized human curation in favor of personalized recommendations, we have doubled down on human curation. And so that is one point I would make. The other is our audience is unique within the landscape. And so 91% of our users are under age 34, and 94% of our users are multicultural. And so we have a very young, lean forward, discovery driven audience that is backed by library listens is the number one stream source on our platform, not personalized recs, not trending, not passive playlist consumption. When library listens is top stream source, it suggests people hear something, they love it, they save it to come back to it. That suggests resonance and stickiness. So when an artist says, well, why should I take the time to prioritize creating community and building a following on Audiomac? I tell them we have young people who have more free time to lean in and discover music. And that is the best potential fan you could find, someone who can grow with you because they have the ability to grow. When you find a fan who is already older, it's more difficult. They have more responsibility. They don't have as much time. They are bandwidth strapped.
Yeah, and there's also a sense, I think, of calcified relationships with the artists they already like, you know.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the human curated playlists. How does that work?
So we have really gone above and beyond to find not just curators and content strategists, but appropriate curators and content strategists who are actually on the ground in a lot of these markets. And that's an advantage that we have over other services where you have these, I'll call them qualified individuals, but who are making curatorial decisions from a New York, from a London, from a Los Angeles, where look, you could do your job remotely, but there's something to be said about being part of a scene and being able to talk to people offline to understand, is this activity that we're seeing actually translating off the internet and being discussed on the ground amongst people. And so we have team members in, I want to say, 13 states across the US. We have at least one team member in 5 continents. My department alone, which is the global content operations and artist services, I oversee 11 across 6 different time zones. So that is an advantage. Having someone in Barcelona, having someone in Lagos, having someone in London to be able to understand the markets and then take that and work with it as far as curation and content strategy.
What kind of roles do those people come from?
That's a great question. Some of them began their journey with us as UGC curators, right? So they created their own accounts, and because they love it, they started curating. And we identified those playlists for the quality of artists that they selected and the performance of those playlists. And we said, hey, would you like to do this in a larger capacity? It also helped that we created a tastemaker program that incentivized more independent music enthusiasts to pursue curation. Some of our team members come from a radio background. Some come from a multimedia, digital media, journalism background. But by and large, we employ music fans. And that is a distinction that I'm very proud of because we're all judged by the company that we keep in this business. And when people see what other services do, they tend to assume that they're being employed and that they don't care about the well-being of artists or that they're not really super passionate. And that is true in some cases, but it is not true in the case of Audiomac. Our team members love what they do.
Can you talk more about your tastemaker program and how that works?
Yeah. So essentially, you would create an account on our service and you would have to have a history of independent curation. And then you can actually apply for a tastemaker badge. If you are granted a tastemaker badge, and this is where your application goes into a queue and it's reviewed by our team, it is then approved and you would be bestowed with a specialized check mark indicating that you are a tastemaker on the service. And then that means that all of your playlists will automatically be considered Audiomac editorial playlists, which means when you curate that music, notifications will go to the artist, the rights holder, or their team, just the same as it would an in-house playlist indicating that you've been added. The next phase for us as a part of this program is incorporating monetization, right? Giving tastemakers the ability to actually generate revenue for themselves with the work that they do.
When you say they have to have a history of independent curation, what does that mean exactly?
That means we need to see that you have created playlists on your profile. that are regularly updated. Someone might create a playlist and not touch it for 8 months. So are you updating your playlist every week with new music? Are you updating the cover for that playlist? That shows us that not only do you care, but there's a level of dedication.
Yeah.
It's funny to me sometimes when I talk to people about Audiomac or when I talk to people about streaming services, I feel like a lot of times you hear a similar array of complaints, about algorithmic playlists, about poor payouts, whatever. I always feel funny because I'm like, well, there's like kind of a solution to that.
A lot of the chief complaints that we see on social media, aside from, well, stream should be able to be monetized at a higher clip. That's a universal complaint, which is understood by all. Aside from that, a lot of the complaints we've solved for a lot of these things, right? So one of them is I want to be able to communicate with my followers, right? Every social media platform, every DSP makes it very difficult for you to actually speak to those who have opted in to follow your profile. Many will only show push notifications or posts to a small number of your following, like 5 or 10%. But if you pay them, or if you buy advertising, or if you boost it, then they'll open it up to more. So there's a financial hurdle that has to be cleared. We solve for that. We have Connect. It is a free messaging feature that is part of the Audiomac Creator app, which is a standalone app available to all creators, where they can send messages, whether just to say hi or to promote a new song or video or merch drop or tour announcement. And that message goes out to everyone who has opted in to follow their profile. Everyone. If you followed the profile, you get the notification. The only way you wouldn't is if you turned off notifications for the entire app, and then you'd still be notified when you log in for your next app session. We have an in-app notification center with a little bell, and you'd see all the messages that you missed. So we solved for that. Another complaint is, well, we're doing music consumption in one place, but we're talking about it somewhere else. And
Yeah.
why not have community exist in the same place as consumption? We solve for that. You can not only comment under songs and albums, but we incorporated Connect. And so now we see communities that exist with artists in the same place that they're doing the listening. So they're not playing hopscotch from Spotify to Twitter or Apple Music to Instagram. They're on Audiomac listening to and talking about the music. And so, yeah, anyone who's listening who has never heard of Audiomac before or thinks like, well, why should I care? Give us a try, right? If nothing else, we could be a fantastic supplement to a full catalog subscription service that you might already have.
The streaming payout issue is just there because the pool of money is only so big and people want to listen to a lot of music. There's not a ton you can do about that. Now, I wanted to talk for a second about like sort of the future of Audiomac. You already talked about how the tastemaker side of things is going to start to ideally get monetized. Obviously, you're making a lot of investments in around the African continent and internationally. What do you think is the next level? How do you think you establish more of presence and growth and get more ears on what you're doing?
Well, I'm really happy to say that we're growing everywhere right now, not
Yeah.
just in Africa,
Yeah,
which
of
is
course.
especially exciting for us. In particular, in markets like the US and Canada and UK, which are a bit more mature and saturated in terms of number of people who have streaming subscriptions. For us, it's to continue to provide a benefit to young creators wherein they can have tools and utilities at their service at the very earliest stages of their careers. You know, you you tend to see, especially outside the US, a, a ton of misunderstanding when it comes to how to approach a potential career in music. There's a lot of misinformation. There's very minimal infrastructure, right? There are no major record labels that are not like subsidiaries of a Universal or Warner or a
Yeah.
Sony that are on the ground in a lot of these markets. There's just not a lot of know-how. And so part of our positioning is to provide benefit when it comes to education and be a trustful source of information to help you advance your career. So and we're playing the long game here, Matt, because if you get in early enough, the hope is that you develop a rapport both with the user and the creator, and that as they grow and they come into more disposable income and they have the ability to look elsewhere, that they remain loyal because we were there for them at the very earliest stages of their career. And so we are doubling down in the markets that we are already seeing tremendous growth in. And then we're also trying to expand in additional markets. We've seen tremendous growth in Brazil, which has not historically been a focus market for us.
Yeah.
We've seen tremendous growth in the Philippines and Southeast Asia, and then really trying to hone in on the diaspora, specifically the UK, France, Germany, and parts of Canada, where there is a ton of Afrobeats, Punjabi, dancehall, soca consumption, and we can be the go-to streaming service for those genres.
Yeah. And so how do you feel that competes versus sort of more like full catalog streaming services?
You know, there's a place for that in the market. And I respect anyone who wants access to be able to listen to every piece of recorded music in history, perhaps in the same place as audiobooks and podcasts and video content. My personal feeling is when you try to be all things to all people, you sort of lose sight of your original mission, which at least for us at Audiomac is to be a artist first music streaming and discovery service. And that is significantly watered down when you're offering all these additional products that are taking time and bandwidth away from people leaning into the music itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it also means the core focus of what you're doing shifts entirely to catalog, I guess, right? Like I feel like it's like this problem of, well, if the top 1% of people are making 98% of my revenue, well, fuck the other 99% because they're going to be here anyway, but I just need to worry about the 500 biggest artists because we have it. And that's such a huge chunk of their revenue.
Yeah, I also think this goes back to who our primary user is. Is
Yeah.
someone who is more active, less passive, who is younger, more discovery driven. If you are a fan of Taylor Swift and Chappell Roan and Sabrina Carpenter and The Weeknd, you're probably not our core user. You are definitely more inclined to press play on a New Music Friday playlist and just let that bad boy rock as if it's Pandora or terrestrial radio. Whereas an Audiomac user is younger, they're hungrier for discovery, and they have a probably more narrow scope and breadth of genres that they are interested in, which happens to align with those that we specialize in.
Absolutely. Any final words of wisdom for us before we wrap this up?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. I deeply appreciate it. I love the content you and your cohorts create
Thank you.
because it is necessary. I like to believe that you do what you all do for the same reason that I do what I do, which is to educate the masses and to provide value. There is so much misinformation on the internet, and it is very difficult to navigate this space as an indie or a major or anyone in the world. And so being a source of trustworthy information is really important. And so thank you for contributing to this positive direction that so few take. In terms of last words, not many, because I've already offered you thousands, but if you haven't already, give Audiomac a try. It's free to download. You don't need a credit card to sign up. We're available on iOS and on Android. If you're an artist, you could freely download our Creator app. It's the same login information and credentials for the Listener app. And if you found anything that I've said valuable whatsoever, you can follow me. I am Brian Zissuk on every platform. That's Threads, Instagram, and Twitter, because I refuse to call it X.
Thank you so much. If you're enjoying this interview, there's 30 more minutes of it coming your way. You should subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications. You only saw half of this interview, and in the second part, we discuss stuff like the power of fan clubs and direct artist access, the death of good artist management, and navigating the changing landscape of the music industry. So one of my favorite companies in the music industry, Bandsintown, just launched an exclusive partnership with YouTube where essentially now when you watch an artist's official YouTube videos, their upcoming tour dates will show up next to that video. We don't fully know what that'll look like yet. There's a rollout with Sabrina Carpenter with some examples as like a beta that might change. But the point being, this is really cool. Like, this is a great way to like make sure people know about your upcoming tour dates when they're consuming your content. There's a similar integration on Spotify. And if you're not keeping your Bandsintown up to date and that's not a priority for you, I feel like you're really, really screwing up.
Bandsintown is a surprisingly artist-friendly platform. I have learned over the last year or so. I mean, I'm sure people will have complaints about it. Maybe you guys do too. But like the fact that you can send like free email blasts to
Yeah.
people who follow you, and granted, practically no one opens them. Uh, but you can also do paid email blasts to other artist followers. Same problem. Most people don't open those emails because who opens up emails for Bandsintown anymore?
But Bandsintown knows this, and the way they set up their subject lines are still very helpful because you're just perusing your emails and you see so-and-so is on tour and you barely read it. But then when we hit them with an ad afterwards, it starts to click. So it's still very useful. I like it as like a sort of tip of the spear.
Can I ask if you guys use Bandsintown?
Yes.
Constantly.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
That's great.
for some of the artists I work with, they keep it up to date all the time
Well,
because like,
I'm more saying, Andrew, do you use it personally to find concerts?
Absolutely
okay,
not.
that's a good question. Do I use it personally to find concerts? Never.
Unknowingly
I-
though, because it has so many integrations. I mean, if
Yeah.
you count me looking at an artist I like's website where it's listed, because every single artist I use uses Bandsintown on Squarespace or whatever site they have. Yes,
Yeah.
I actually do use it because that's how I know about my artists.
Given that,
It's also on Spotify, we should say, too. You can get your tickets.
Yeah,
I'd say out of
100%.
the last like 5 shows I've gone to, 3 of them have been me finding out about them on Spotify, which that is a Bandsintown
There you go.
integration
Yep.
most of the time, at least.
I mean, it could be Ticketmaster, AXS, C Tickets, or Ticketek, any of the above. But funny enough, I have the alerts on, and you guys will be real shocked to hear this in a weird way. I like to go to concerts in other cities because New York City is terrible and the venues are too big. The shows cost too much money if you miss the tickets. So I have it turned on for Charleston, South Carolina, because that's my favorite city to eat in. And then I get alerted of those artists I listen to, and then I can decide if I want to go down there to see a show.
Oh, I
Gee.
just use it constantly because I travel so much and I want to just go to shows and see what's up. And I know a lot of people, because I'm kind of in a social group of heavy concert goers. And a lot of people, when they're figuring out what they're going to do this week, part of their week is they just look at Bandsintown and are like, yeah, here's the shows I would like that are in town. Like my girlfriend and I do that like every week just to figure out like, is there something cool we want to do? But the point I really want to make here that's really crucial to me is that if you are not doing this, and a lot of you are not doing this because I pay attention, you are missing out on free advertising for your shows because Bandsintown, the 2 things you pay for, which are more email blasts and the ads within Bandsintown, those are completely optional. All of the integrations, this YouTube thing, whatever, all of that is free. And it is the plugin. It's a lot more used than Songkick. Also, Songkick is owned by Warner, just saying.
Oh, no.
Hold
I
on,
don't know,
I've got
people
Warner
get-
clients. Warner's fantastic. They have a great team. I
Well,
love
no,
Warner.
it's not a dig on Warner. I just know that some of our listeners like don't want to do something affiliated with a major label.
Fair.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that like
wait, Matt, can I get this straight? You're talking to the incels again?
aren't I always, Jesse?
Those are metal. I think metal fans, right? Metal
He
fans.
can't
themselves.
help what he is. man.
Damn, coming from a motherfucker in a
Wrecked.
Tool shirt.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I'm wearing a Trellum shirt, which
I
is
don't
like a
even know what
90s black metal
Trellum-
band.
No, of course, it's a
but
black metal band.
no, but seriously, like Bandsintown is like I would rate it as probably top 3 most useful tool across all genres.
Okay, okay. There we should stop for a second. So I have heard, and I should say this. I even personally, like, I was managing a band till recently that when I first started managing them, I did it because I was like, great, they're never going to tour again. Then they decided to fucking tour and I wanted to die. So I then used some of the promotional stuff inside Bandsintown to promote their tour. I actually had great success with it.
Yeah.
Now, it could have been that they hadn't toured in a while and it was very easy once I got a lot of low propensity showgoers to know they were touring for it to work well. I've heard other people say awful things. Obviously, artist enthusiasm is going to determine it. Have you guys had experience that's good with using the paid promotions in Bandsintown?
I will read you some stats I just pulled open, and I don't remember what we paid for these, but this was about a year ago, September 2024. We ran 3 campaigns, 3 different cities. Only sent for one of them 174 emails, 97 opens, so 55% open rate.
That's
Really
Zero
good.
clicks,
Good.
which was weird. 0 clicks. 126 sent for a different city, 56 opens, 44%. Also great. 0 clicks. And then 55 sent for another city, 36% opens for 20 opens, 0 clicks. And my conclusion with this was that the 0% click rate almost has to be a technical glitch, because there's no way that quite literally like 170 people would open emails at these high metrics and then not a single one would click anything. I think that's unrealistic. So our theory is that the click tracking was bad. But honestly, like that was a pretty neat result. I unfortunately don't remember what we paid to run these campaigns, because if it was like $3, that's amazing. If it was 300, that's horrible. But I don't remember what we actually spent. Let me clarify. That was actually the free marketing. So we actually spent nothing for that. So
There you go.
they did find that answer.
First of all, I pulled up some Bandsintown stats for a campaign I did for an artist, and we definitely got like clicks in line with what you see with email blasts, so around 1%, 2%. But this is a really salient point that's really, really important to hear. Bandsintown will let you send emails specific to people in certain cities, which is not super easy to do otherwise. There's ways to do it, but Bandsintown makes it a lot easier. Just saying.
I found our paid campaign that we ran. We spent $100 and we sent it to 1,600 emails to fans living in the United Kingdom who were fans of MGMT, Kings of Leon, Walk the Moon, the 1975, and Vampire Weekend. And we got 217 opens for a 13% open rate with 2 clicks for a total of 0.92% click-through rate. And Apple just gave me some balloons for that. Apparently. Thanks, Apple. I guess that was the firework one.
I didn't know about this one.
For $100, you know, I mean, we got to send 1,600 emails and 270 people opened it, and I'm sure there's the awareness thing in the subject line, like Dustin was talking about. But I don't know, Matt, the email open rates you were talking about and click rates, was it better than that? I mean, like it might have been a bigger artist you were working with, so I would imagine it changes.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I said, it was 1 or 2%, which is like solid, but that was just paid through you only get a certain amount of emails you're allowed to send every month with Bandsintown, and this was a lot.
Well,
But I've
the
also
free
gotten a lot
ones-
of good reports on the ads with Bandsintown.
Yeah, the free ones are specifically to your followers, right? And then, which honestly, in a world where everybody has to pay to reach their own followers, good on Bandsintown to actually allow you to reach your followers. But oh, go ahead.
I think you're allowed like 5,000 free sends a month or something.
10,000.
And 10,000, and then after that, so
So
smaller
yes, you
artists
still
are
have to
fine.
pay if you have, but still, that's still not bad.
It's
It's really
10,000 a month, and so like you can, you know, if you have a tour, like I guess it depends. If you had like if you're playing like 15 dates in the month, that might screw you. But if you're playing like a couple shows this month and a couple shows next month, like you could have, you know, 20,000 fans. You can send 10,000 of those fans that live here, and then 10,000 of those fans that live there. So it's pretty generous considering how Instagram gives you 0, and TikTok gives you 0, and Spotify gives you 0.
I mean, I just think of the ROI of you take the time to put in a ticket link, a show, and some details, 60 seconds. And a lot of your most engaged fans who use this app are then going to get a pop-up on their phone. And I don't get it very often. I listen to a lot of different groups, but I'll get the Fainter playing Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm like, I sure would like to eat at Little Jack's Tavern and go see the Faint.
And
How do
again,
you
it's
get a
that
pop up on your phone?
you
I
can
have
turn on.
push notifications on for it, and it'll pop up
Oh.
on there.
Okay.
And the other key is really like just with the email blasts. We talked about this before, but the subject line is everything, because it doesn't matter if you have 3 opens. If people see the subject line that you're going on tour, they know.
Yeah, that's all I care about. I mean, I don't want to overinflate the value of it. To me, when you want to sell tickets, it's a multi-pronged approach, and you need these really tertiary things like Bandsintown. What's going to sell the ticket is the third SMS that I send to somebody in that town that is 4 days out, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do this weekend. I mean, right now for any room, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, 1,500 and lower in terms of capacity. That's where you're, months of just this tertiary, encounters with your show. So it's cool to set up, it's cool to send out, but I definitely, if I was an artist out there, it would be like, one thing that you do amongst many others.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I've worked in some shows where we're doing the bands in town, they're posting on social media, we're running a meta ad retargeting campaign, they're running a YouTube retargeting campaign, they're running a Spotify ad studio retargeting campaign, they're sending an email blast out, they're talking about it on social media, they're going to the local radio station, doing ticket giveaway, like they're doing everything.
And then the
Uh,
venue cancels a week out.
yeah,
Or the band,
exactly.
or the band
Sometimes
gets
it is the case.
the band gets their visas denied, like what happened to me today.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. We're trying to get this to go as far as it can. So please start a conversation with a musician friend by sending it to them.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, subscribe and turn on post notifications so that you never miss an upload every single Tuesday. If you could rate us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, it really helps us a lot. So tune in next week and I'll see you then.